Now, all levies in Queensland follow three different categories. So there's the administrative fund levy, the sinking fund levy, and the insurance levy. Administrative fund levy is probably they each have their own questions, I guess. Administrative fund levy, the questions we get about that are very different to the sinking fund. So in the administrative fund, this is where the body corporate pays for all of its annual running costs. So it's the easiest fund to understand, but it probably has the most confusing name. So it should really be called the running cost fund, or the annual maintenance fund, or something like that. The way that levy is calculated is we prepare a budget with the committee each year, and we just look at all of the costs that the body corporate will incur in that financial year. We add them all together, and then we divide it by the number of owners. So there's really no black magic in the administrative fund. It's simply a matter of adding up all of the costs, dividing it by the number of people who pay those costs, and that works out at the rate which owners pay to keep the building operating. So most of the costs that you would pay in a household environment, the body corporate also pays those. So the administrative fund pays for things like water bills for the common property, electricity. If you've got an on-site management agreement, it would pay for the remuneration of the on-site manager. It'll pay for tools, so fuel for the lawnmower, mulch for the gardens, fertilizer, pool cleaning, pool chemicals, lift servicing. So anything that's an ongoing cost which is in the maintenance of the common property or the operation of the common property is paid from the administrative fund. Probably the biggest misunderstanding is because it has the word administrative levy in it, a lot of owners think that that is a fee to pay to the body corporate manager to do the administration work. So we do an administrative job, but the administrative levy, the wording there comes from the legislation, and it has nothing to do with our administrative work. So one of the costs that a body corporate does pay is for a body corporate manager to do the accounting and the secretarial work or the administrative work. That is paid out of the administrative fund, but it's generally quite a small portion of what the administrative fund is collecting for. So that's why I say annual running costs would be a better way to describe the administrative levy, but unfortunately we're just stuck with the name that the legislation has chosen to give that fund. In terms of trends in the administrative fund levy, because it's paying the annual running costs, if the spending is stable, so if the building is generally doing the same thing this year as it did last year, then we would expect the administrative fund levy to generally rise with inflation. So inflation, as I'm sure we all know lately, is the increasing cost of the same goods and services over time. And the body corporate is exposed to that same pressure like everybody on this webinar is. So everything the body corporate purchases, or all of the services that the body corporate takes out, generally rise in cost year on year. So when owners see their administrative fund levy increasing, 3%, 5%, that doesn't mean the body corporate is, going crazy and wasting their money. It just means that the things that the body corporate is purchasing and providing to the site have risen in cost in line with the general economy. So it is normal for administrative fund levies to rise generally with inflation. Where you'll see administrative fund levies change is where the body corporate has made a change to what it's doing. So if, for example, the body corporate has a gardening contractor coming once a month and everybody's complaining that the gardens aren't looking good, and the body corporate decides to increase the gardening frequency to once every fortnight, that would double the number of services of gardening in a 12-month period, and the cost of gardening in the budget would double. So that would make us an increase to the administrative fund levy because of a change that the body corporate implemented. And of course, on the flip side, you would expect the place would look better, and rental and sale proceeds would increase in line with those improvements. So that's where you see administrative fund levies changing beyond inflation. Another trend we see is that smaller buildings are generally more easily influenced by price rises. So if you think about a block of 6 units, it has a much smaller budget, and therefore the gardening bill or the electricity bill as a proportion of its total spending is much higher. So if the electricity price rises by 20%, that would have a bigger impact on a smaller building's administrative fund levy. In a bigger building, so in a high-rise in the city, it would obviously have a much higher electricity bill in the first place. So a 20% rise in electricity cost would still be a big increase for that building, but it would be only one of a lot of other costs that would generally stay the same. So the percentage increase you'd see for the same electricity rise is probably more exaggerated in a smaller building. And that's often counter to people's intuition. So a lot of owners say to us, look, my building is small, so therefore the levies should be really stable and should stay lower than a big building. But what small buildings don't have is economy of scale on their costs. So it's often the other way around, where small buildings are more exposed than big buildings. So that's administrative fund levy. Insurance levy, this is the easiest one. The insurance levy just pays for the cost of the building insurance policy. So most schemes in Queensland, the body corporate will provide building insurance for the whole building, not contents, of course, but building insurance. And if the building has an insurance levy, that insurance levy should closely match the amount of money that the body corporate spends on its insurance policy. That levy is separate. It's an administrative cost because it's an annual cost, but it's often separated because the way the insurance levy is calculated based on individual lots can be different to the administrative and sinking fund levies. So when something's calculated on a different ratio system, it has to be separated as a different levy. So that's why some buildings you'll see an insurance levy and some buildings you won't. If you don't see an insurance levy on a particular invoice, it's generally included in the administrative fund levy and paid on the same ratio system as the admin levy. Our sinking fund levy. So again, highly debated among lots of buildings. Importantly, the administrative fund levy and the insurance levy are linked to spending in that year. So whatever the body corporate's spending, it needs to bring in that same amount of income, pretty much. Otherwise, it's going to go backwards. With the sinking fund levies are not linked to the spending in that year. So a sinking fund is a savings fund, and it's a long-term savings fund. So no different to, households. If you're saving up to buy a new car or do a renovation, you're saving money every year, even if in that year you're not actually spending anything out of that savings. So the idea of savings is that it gets bigger and bigger over time. So we will see a lot of questions in the sinking fund where the body corporate has raised its sinking fund levies, and that's raising the savings amount. And owners may say, well, nothing's being done. What are you spending that on? But that is not the right question, because the body corporate's not spending the sinking fund money. It's just raising it. So it's really forced savings as a group. The idea of the sinking fund levy, I suppose, is that if a body corporate didn't have a sinking fund and things needed to be done on the property which were expensive, it would be very difficult to get owners to pay big lump sum payments of $10,000, $20,000 at a time. So instead, the law requires owners to pay that money in every year. So the theory is when the body corporate needs to spend it, it's already got it or got most of it in the bank account. The sinking fund levy is based on a 10-year projection of capital costs. So the amount of the levy is not just made up. It is based on a quantity surveyor's report that says over the next 10 years, this building needs to spend $100,000 and you've got 10 years to get there. So, that's $10,000 a year. And after 10 years, you'll have the $100,000 and you can spend it on painting or whatever the project is. And of course, buildings have lots of different projects on the go at all different times. So it's a combination of all those projects, and the annual levy is required to meet those.